Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
The letter was pinned next to the elevator again. Same paper, same tone. Reminder: guest animals must be declared in writing. Violations affect occupancy status. I took a photo of it with today's date showing on my flip phone, just like I did the last 3 times. Scout sat by the front door with his tail thumping every few seconds, steady as a metronome. He's got that weighting down to a science look. Head low, eyes on me like he's reading the air pressure. I swear the dog knows when I'm stalling. Quick note: before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. I'm Walter Preston, 70 years old. I live in Bayview Towers, 3 blocks off the inlet, in a co-op my late wife bought and paid off in 2004. My stepdaughter Tara calls it Dad's place and keeps circling like a hawk, asking when I'll free it up. She called again last Sunday. It's just a simple quit claim, Walter, for tax reasons. I told her to email it. She blew up and sent 12 texts in 40 minutes, like that was going to change anything. Scout's not a pet. He's 6, a lab mix trained as a guide dog until his guy died. The trainer placed him with me because I keep a routine like clockwork, and Scout needs that. He knows the sound of the crosswalk chime at the bait shop and turns left when he hears it. He knows the smell of Harborview Pharmacy and which door chime means we're at the ER. Smartest animal I've ever met. Every morning starts the same. I get up, take 2 pills for the heart, carvedilol and lisinopril, then wipe down the counters, even if they're clean. Then it's coffee, half-calf with a splash of cream, and a check of the weather radio. Old dispatcher habits die hard. Everything in my apartment has a place. Everything labeled. I've got tax slips and binders, ferry schedules dating back to the 90s, and my maintenance receipts go back to when people still faxed. Scout stood when I grabbed the harness. He doesn't bark unless it's serious, but he'll nudge me if I'm dragging my feet too long. I clipped the pouch to his side, got his vet card, my med list, and the pharmacy tab in there. March balance, $118.74. Stacy Clark runs Harborview. She lets me keep a tab. She sees Scout through the window and waves before the door even opens. "Just bring what you can, Walter," she always says. I plan to pay the full amount this week. Got a little pension check coming in. Inside the hall closet, I was digging for an old scarf when I found a shoebox with my name on it. TDK cassette, Polaroid of me and Cora McMillan standing by a blue Chevy. That was 1986. The tape was labeled, Cora, April 17th, 1986. My chest got tight just seeing it. Cora was my first love, Seaglade Community College. Her dad was Judge Arthur McMillan, the kind of man who called dock workers temporary people. One day she was gone. A month later, someone told me the baby died. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, and popped the tape into my Sony. "Still works?" Her voice came on, thin but steady. She said she was filing paperwork to change a hospital record. Then silence. I must have sat there 10 minutes, frozen. I've heard every kind of lie on the docks, but this was different. An hour later, my neighbor Randy Pike, drinks too much and films everything, texted me a clip. Scout walking himself to the ER crosswalk and waiting at the ramp like he's punched a time card. "Thought you'd want this," Randy wrote. "Dog's a legend." I saved the clip to my USB and set my alarm pills out early. Something was tightening in the air. I could feel it in my chest. The second Scout left, I slid to the floor and leaned back against the fridge, knees up, arms crossed tight. My heart wasn't hammering exactly. It was twitching, off rhythm, like a loose wire sparking behind the panel. I kept my breathing shallow and counted. 1, 2, skip. 3, skip. Every 5th beat felt like a missed step on a ladder. I didn't panic. I just stayed small, stayed still. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the glass like a kid knocking too hard. Somewhere deep in the storm, a barge blew its horn, low and long, the kind that hits in your chest like a drum. I pressed my palm over my sternum and told myself not to black out. Just stay upright. 1 more minute. In the hallway, Scout knew. He whined once, then his claws clicked toward the elevator like he was on a shift. When I let the door go behind him, I heard the thump of the button. He always taps it with his shoulder. And then nothing for a long time. I'd trained him for this, ran drills with Randy timing us, testing wind, testing noise. I kept a laminated route in the emergency route tab on his harness and updated the contact list monthly. Harborview Pharmacy first. Then, if no answer from me, the hospital. Stacy knew the protocol. She'd seen the pouch before. She just didn't think she'd have to actually use it. Back in my kitchen, I sipped water and felt it slosh around like I was already on a gurney. My hands were cold, not clammy. Cold like the morning dock rail. I didn't try to stand again. I just waited. Scout made it to Harborview in under 4 minutes. Stacy told me later she saw him trot up and sit square on the mat. She read the note. BP high, meds list on card, bring ER if no answer. Then tried calling me twice. When I didn't pick up, she called the hospital's intake number straight off the tag on the harness. Jennifer Alvarez answered on the second ring. Stacy didn't waste time. It's Walter from Bayview Towers, dog courier, probable cardiac. Jennifer didn't hesitate, paged a paramedic unit while still on the line. That's how I know the system works, because 2 women who've never met did exactly what they should have without blinking. Scout waited out front, sat by the curb like a statue, didn't chase cars, didn't bark, just stared at the street and tracked sound. When the rig pulled up, lights but no siren, he stood and stepped toward them like he was clocking in. Randy, ever-nosy neighbor, filmed from his balcony as the medics followed, while Scout guided them to the ramp. I tried to stand when I heard the elevator ding, but I only made it to one knee before the floor swam. One of them knelt fast, checked my pulse, said, "Irregular." I felt Scout's paw tap my shoe. Just once. Like, I did my job. Your turn now. They got me onto the gurney, asked me about allergies, which I answered by pointing to the med list in my pocket. I don't remember the elevator ride, just the hallway blur and Scout's tail brushing my hand as we rolled out. As they loaded me in, Scout chased the rig a few yards, then peeled off hard, cutting across the sidewalk and straight toward the ER doors. Head low, nose twitching, wind at his back. A lab in full gear and full mission. It'd be almost funny if it didn't feel like the last thing I'd ever see. Inside, things moved fast. They wheeled me straight through intake. Jennifer must have flagged it already. A nurse read my folder and muttered, "This man keeps paperwork like a lawyer," as she flipped through meds, contacts, notes on recent vitals. Then the surgeon came in. Young, serious, coat too clean. Dr. Greg McMillan. He looked down at my card, and then over at the dog waiting by the sliding door. "Preston, port dispatcher, Bayview Co-op. Call Jennifer," he told another nurse, no hesitation. Jennifer was already waiting. She pointed at the note Scout had delivered and said, "Vitals logged." We started a line. Portable EKG en route. They slid me into a curtained bay and started poking, pressing, sticking things. Nothing hurt, but everything felt heavier than it should have. One nurse leaned in and asked, "Is there family we should call?" I said, "No one who helps?" She just nodded. No judgment. Like she'd heard that line 500 times. Between beeps and wires, I caught the sound of Scout outside. Just a low huff, not quite a bark. Someone must have brought him water, because I could hear slurping. Probably Jennifer. She's the type to remember little things like that. Dr. McMillan came back and reviewed the EKG himself. Didn't pawn it off. His eyes were calm but focused, scanning like he was trying to find the one line out of place. He didn't speak right away, just nodded once like he'd filed something away. Scout wasn't allowed past the front waiting area, but I heard someone say, "That dog's got clearance." Another nurse chimed in, "He brought the patient in, didn't he?" It was all half whispers and sideways looks, like they were watching a scene from a movie. They moved me to observation. Jennifer made sure my tote came with me. Binder, insurance card, power of attorney, even that stupid co-op newsletter I hadn't tossed yet. Everything I might need. Before she left, she said, "You got here faster than most people with cars." I told her that dog knows the inlet better than half the cab drivers. She smiled and pulled the curtain shut. As I laid there under the hum of fluorescent lights, chest patched in wires and a cold IV dripping into my arm, I heard a nurse mutter, 70 years old and more prepared than people half his age. I didn't respond, just rested my hand on my chest and waited for the meds to do their thing. Outside the curtain, I heard someone say, "That dog walked himself here?" And another voice answered, "Yeah. Led the medics, too. Like he's done it before." Dr. McMillan came back after they'd finished the labs and fluids, pulled up the little plastic chair by my bed, and actually sat. Not perched, not checking his watch. Sat like he had nowhere else to be. His eyes were on my face, not the monitor, and that told me plenty. "I'm not your cardiologist," he said, calm voice, even breath. "But I vouch to get you in fast. Jennifer's good at the maze. I just helped cut the line." "Then I owe you," I said. My voice still rasped a bit, like the inside of my throat had been sanded down. "How's Scout?" He smirked, tilted his head. "Your dog's outside with a fan club, a pharmacy manager, and a guy with a camcorder. Don't worry, he's fine. They're treating him like royalty. Someone even brought him jerky." I could picture it. Scout posted up at the ER doors like he owned the building, Stacy fussing over him, Randy circling with his camera like he was covering a parade. I nodded, then shifted a little, felt the edge of my tote bag under my elbow. "I've got a question," I said, "from a different century." That caught his attention. He leaned in just enough. I pulled out the sheet protector, slid it across the blanket toward him. Inside was the Polaroid of me and Cora, standing beside my old blue Chevy with her hair catching the light like always. And behind it, the TDK cassette, label faded but still readable. Cora, April 17th, 1986. I saw the hesitation in his fingers when he touched the plastic. Didn't say anything yet, just looked. "Her name was Cora McMillan," I said. "Your last name makes my neck prickle." He didn't flinch, but his hand stopped. That pause was enough. She was my first love. Seaglade Community College. I was working docks, she was studying nursing. Her father was Judge Arthur McMillan. One day she vanished. Just gone. I got a call a month later telling me the baby was stillborn. I swallowed hard. That was all. Nothing in writing. Just that. He sat back, hands together, thinking. Then he said, "My mother never married. I was raised under her name. She didn't talk about my father much. Sometimes she'd say, 'Some things were decided for me.' That was her line. Over and over." I pulled out my old cassette player. Still works. Replaced the belt 2 years ago. Popped the tape in and pressed play. Cora's voice filled the room. Thin, a little shaky, but hers. No question. "April 17th, 1986, she said, and my chest tightened. "The clerk said the amended register will be processed soon, so no one can trace it. After that, I won't exist. Not as a mother." Greg stared at the speaker like it had teeth. "That's a weird phrase for a mother grieving," he muttered. I nodded, slow. "Your birthday?" "April 18th, he said. 1986. The air got heavy. I watched him make the mental leap, his shoulders squared. "I want DNA, he said. 3 kits, separate labs, chain of custody clean. You good with that?" "Yeah," I said. "You didn't even finish the sentence." He stepped out and came back with Jennifer. She handled the swabs herself. Clean gloves, sealed kits. We signed every label, time-stamped every vial. Nobody was going to say we faked anything. Jennifer double-checked the envelope seals before she left. "One for a hospital partner lab," she said. "One will overnight to Ohio, and one to a private genomics company we use when things get weird." She glanced at Greg. "This counts as weird, right?" He nodded, just once. She returned 10 minutes later with a stack of admission forms. You're coded for observation through Thursday, she said, setting the clipboard down gently. You're already pre-approved. No surprises. I signed each line slow, pressing hard like I was hammering down the truth. No shortcuts, no blanks, just the facts on the paper. I handed the board back and rested my hand on top of the blanket. Then my phone buzzed. Old flip phone, barely rings, just rattles. Jennifer saw the caller ID flash. Tara Nolan. She raised an eyebrow. You want me to step out? No, I said. Might as well let her hear some reality. I clicked it open. Yeah? Tara jumped right in. No hello. Is the hospital going to advocate for assisted living? Because if you've got cardiac problems, we need to make that decision before winter. You can't manage an apartment anymore, Dad. Jennifer froze, then slowly put her hand on her hip. I said, loud enough for the speaker to catch it, Jennifer, the intake nurse is standing right here. She says I'm competent. Tara tried to recover. I'm just saying, if the building's unsafe, don't. Just email whatever you want reviewed. I'm not signing anything without a full audit. She hung up. No goodbye. Greg looked like he wanted to throw something. She always like that? She wants the apartment, I said, and she doesn't like getting told no. He stood, pacing slow. Let me loop your cardiologist in. Make sure someone's got eyes on you after discharge. Don't have one. He stopped, turned. You serious? Yeah, been healthy. Or lucky. He sighed and pulled out his pager. All right. I'll call the on-call doc. You're getting follow-up whether you like it or not. Before he left, he paused at the curtain. His voice was softer but not weak. If the name McMillan is dirty in your story, he said, it's because of my grandfather, not me. I looked him dead in the eye. Kid, I'm not blaming you. I'm just following the paper. He gave a little nod, the kind men do when they've heard something they needed to. Then he walked out. By the second day, my color was back, and the meds had settled into a rhythm that didn't make my chest feel like a flipped breaker panel. Jennifer brought Scout in through the service entrance, twice. He tucked himself under the visitor chair like he had a badge and a schedule to keep. Didn't move except to nudge my foot once when the IV beeped too long. Stacy stopped by on her lunch break with a brown paper sack and a thick envelope. She pulled up a chair like she'd done it 100 times, like we were neighbors in a waiting room, and not strangers from opposite ends of a prescription counter. I called Jennifer right after Scout left, she said, pulling out the envelope. You know I've seen that pouch on his harness for years, right? So I didn't panic. I just read the note and started dialing. She handed me a stack of delivery slips, each stamped with Harborview's logo. In the corner of each one was a digital signature pad print. Scout's paw, messy but clear. She'd printed 6 months' worth. I figured if anyone tries to say he's not trained, this helps. She didn't smile, just set it down like a receipt and leaned back. I nodded. You've got good instincts. She shrugged. So does he. After she left, I opened the tote and pulled out my Cora binder, 5th one down in the metal drawer, yellow tab. I slid it onto the bed tray and waited until Greg walked in with his coffee, and that permanent look of 5 hours of sleep stretched over 3 days of stress. I promised you paper, I said. He raised an eyebrow as I handed over the binder. You deliver. Inside were 3 letters from Cora, dated from late 1985, the original Polaroid, a flash drive with the digitized cassette file, and a list I'd typed out 2 years ago. Names, positions, a few addresses where I could still find nurses or clerks from Seaglade's delivery records. Greg flipped through it slow. You really logged all this? I don't forget women who vanish. We headed out mid-morning, Jennifer pushing my paperwork ahead so we wouldn't get stuck in a hallway. Greg wheeled me to County Vital Records on his break, even called in a favor for a service pass so we wouldn't have to wait 2 hours behind people trying to amend marriage licenses. The clerk's name was Harold, big guy with a stained mug and a notepad that said Request Log 2011 through present on the cover. He took one look at Greg's hospital ID and then my affidavit and said, No copies. No photos. 1 hour max. You want it clean? We do it by the book. We nodded. He led us to a back room with glass dividers, pulled out the April '86 index, and laid it flat. The first record we found said Macmillan with no first name. Date, April 18th. Margin note, stillborn, confirmed. The handwriting on that line looked rushed, left slanted, faded in places like someone had pressed too light. Then Greg turned the page. There it was again. Baby M. This one had a live birth tag. Same mother. CM. But the entry had been overwritten twice. 2 different pens, 2 different hands. One correction initialed with a slash, the other with a squiggle that didn't match the clerk ledger. Greg pointed. This should never happen on an original. You either amend with a supplemental page or strike through clean. This looks like 2 people tried to erase each other. He opened the next folder. Voluntary relinquishment. Name on the form, Cora Macmillan. Signature was careful. Too careful. Like someone copying a sample. I watched Greg's eyes narrow. This signature's too pretty. And Cora's left-handed? Right-handed, I said. Always was. Her handwriting leaned sharp and fast. He looked at the notary stamp. You've got to be kidding me. I leaned forward. The stamp read, authorized by Calgrove, Warren, and Flint. That was Judge Arthur Macmillan's former law partner's firm. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down the stamp number and the notary's full name. Then I looked up at Harold. You ever audit these? Harold gave a sharp laugh, no humor in it. Only when someone sues, and even then, the paper fights back. Back outside, Greg helped me into the car, then stared at the sidewalk like he was counting bricks. There's no way my mother knew that file existed, that form, that name erased and rewritten. If she signed anything, it wasn't this. I said nothing. Just opened my pilotage log and flipped to a note from years ago when a dock pilot's incident crossed paths with hospital records. One name had stuck in my head back then. Agnes Yoon, retired clerk, lived near the old bus depot. 2 transfers from here, maybe 30 minutes with traffic. We went straight there. The building was quiet, smelled like boiled cabbage and bleach. Agnes opened her door after I knocked 3 times and explained who I was. You're Walter, she said. You used to tag receipts by vessel. Yeah, I remember. We sat in her living room while she looked over the sketch Greg had made of the altered file. She didn't need much prompting. Judge Macmillan leaned hard on agencies. He'd bring pastries, make jokes, leave names behind and come back 3 days later to see if the problem solved itself. Half the time it did. People were scared of him. He had clout. I asked if she remembered Cora. Skinny girl, sad eyes, cried in the stairwell during break one day. I was told not to get involved, so I didn't. Greg set his coffee down and said, I need a handwriting expert. I didn't blink. I've got one. Union guy. Did insurance fraud and retirement disability cases. Name's Dale Mercier. Lives out past the shipyards. Owes me 2 favors. We thanked Agnes, left her a number, and were halfway down the hall when a young staffer cleaning the mail cubbies looked up, then leaned closer to Greg. I've seen that notary stamp, she whispered. 3 adoption files, all 1986, all with crossed-out mothers. Then she picked up her mop and walked away fast, like she hadn't said anything at all. The hospital sent me home with a new beta blocker, 2 pages of discharge notes, and a printed action plan that Jennifer went over line by line like a drill sergeant. She offered to set up home health visits. I told her I've got a dog that beats most nurses on time and doesn't charge per hour. She smirked and handed me a copy of everything in a folder with tabs. Just in case someone tries to say you weren't managing, she said. The cab dropped me off just before noon. I had Scout's leash looped around my wrist and my hospital tote slung over my shoulder. The elevator opened to the 3rd floor like it always did. But there she was, Tara, leaning against my door like she belonged there, holding a grocery bag in both hands and wearing a sunny smile that didn't touch her eyes. I brought soup, she said as I stepped out, voice light like we were in some sitcom. I didn't answer right away. Scout moved between us before I could speak. Shoulder squared, eyes locked on her like he already knew something I didn't. "I'm fine," I said flat. "You didn't need to come." Tara didn't budge. "Well, I wanted to. You had a heart event, Walter. That's serious. And you didn't even tell me." I reached for the keys. Because the second I tell you anything, it turns into a pitch about assisted living or power of attorney. She stepped a little closer, enough to look past me into the apartment. Her eyes went straight to Scout's harness. "I just care, that's all," she said, voice syrupy. "You can't expect me not to worry." I opened the door, and Scout was in first, tail stiff, not wagging. He didn't bark, but his back legs stayed braced. I set my things down and turned on the kettle. While I reached for the mug, I heard Scout give a soft, alert bark, not loud, but low and focused. When I turned, he had moved between Tara and the sliding door to the balcony, not snarling, not overreacting, just standing like a wall. Tara looked down at him, then up at me. "He's acting weird," she said, but her voice cracked a little. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. 3 short raps. I opened it to find Randy Pike, red-faced, winded, and whispering. "Don't let her give him anything," he said, eyes darting toward Tara. "I got it on video. 10 minutes ago. She was by the dumpster shaking something onto a piece of ham. Then she whistled and started calling for him." I stared at him. "You sure?" "I got the whole thing, Walter. Zoomed in. She didn't see me. I swear." I turned back toward the kitchen. "Tara, step into the hall." "What?" she snapped. "Why?" I pulled out my voice recorder, thumbed it on, and held it out where she could see the red light. "If my dog gets sick, you know the vet runs full toxin panels, right? They show the exact compound, exact quantity, exact delivery method, and the chain of custody on a frozen sample holds up in court." Her whole face changed. Gone was the soft daughter act. "You're paranoid," she hissed. "You always have been. This is what happens when people live alone too long. You think everyone's out to get you." Then she reached for the mail on my counter. I watched her fingers graze the top envelope. I saw what she was trying to grab, an open letter from the co-op board mentioning occupancy reviews for multi-bedroom units. I stepped in front of her. "Don't touch anything that's not yours." She backed away, still clutching the grocery bag. Scout came up beside me and looked at me, then at the fridge. I grabbed the phone and called down to Randy. "You still got that ham?" He came back up a minute later with a sandwich bag inside another sandwich bag. Inside was a small piece of meat with what looked like powder smudged into the edge. Scout sniffed it once, backed off, then nudged it toward me with his nose. Refused it. I grabbed a clean jar, sealed the ham inside it, and wrote the date and time on a sticky note before taping it across the top. Then I made 2 phone calls, animal control and the non-emergency police line. An officer came out within the hour. Mid-40s, bald, wore the kind of boots that said he didn't take nonsense. I handed him the jar, the baggie, Randy's video on USB, and the audio clip from my recorder. He logged everything on a clipboard, gave me a complaint number, and turned to Tara. "You need to leave the premises. Right now. Do not return without legal clearance." Tara stared at him. "You can't be serious. He's making this up. He's got memory issues." "I've got a sealed evidence jar," the officer said, voice flat. "And a dog who refused the meat. If the tox screen comes back with even trace levels of a compound harmful to animals, it'll go on your record. Now go." She stormed out without another word. Just the sound of her shoes clicking fast against the tile. Within 60 minutes, the co-op president called my landline. "Walter, did something happen? Tara's upset. Says you accused her of something criminal." I sat at the desk, opened my logbook, and flipped to the fresh page. "Case ID number 23917, I said calmly. "Filed today. Includes an officer's statement and animal control documentation. I'll bring it to the next board meeting if that's necessary." Silence. "Understood," the president finally said. We'll wait to hear from you. That night, I moved my 3 most important binders, Cora, medical, and housing, into a lockbox I bolted to the floor of the bedroom closet behind the hanging coats. Took me 30 minutes with a socket wrench and a flashlight. I didn't even curse. I left the junk folder where it sat. Let anyone snooping chew on decoy bills from 10 years ago and fake doctor pamphlets about skin tags. Once everything was locked down, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. I emailed Jennifer and Greg, included the incident number, officer name, and time of call. I uploaded the footage to a private folder and backed it up on the flash drive I keep around my neck. Greg replied 6 minutes later, "Stay put. Also, Dale can see us Thursday for handwriting." Scout curled up by the door and let out a low breath like he'd been holding it in all day. I looked at him and nodded. "Good boy. You saw it before I did." By Thursday, Scout had memorized the walk from my apartment to Greg's clinic. He even learned which corners had the good smells and which ramps were too slick to trust. I let him lead. After everything, he'd earned it. We did the first DNA kit that Monday in Greg's office. Sterile gloves, new swab pack, triple-signed chain of custody sheet. Jennifer dropped by just to log it and witness the seals. I paid for that one. Greg didn't argue. Thursday came. We did the second test. I offered to pay again. Greg snorted and pulled out his wallet like it was a duel. "I'm not letting you foot the whole truth," he said. "We're splitting this, like men who don't want favors hanging over their heads." I let him win. Barely. The third test we sent off the next Tuesday. That one went to Ohio, express shipped with 2 tracking codes and a signed affidavit from Jennifer herself. 3 days later, the first result came back. Insufficient sample, lab contamination suspected. I didn't blink. That happens. Too many chain of custody handoffs, 1 lazy glove change, whatever. Second result landed on Saturday. Probable first-degree relation. Not conclusive, but close enough that my stomach got tight. Third one came in Tuesday night. I was drinking decaf and checking labels in my binder when the alert buzzed. I opened it on my laptop, squinting at the header like it might say something different the second time. Paternity match greater than 99.6%. I read it twice, then once out loud. Scout huffed from the kitchen floor like he knew what that meant. I called Greg. He answered on the second ring. "It's confirmed," I said. Silence. Then he breathed in deep. "Okay," he said. Nothing else. I waited. He said, "My mother lives near the canal, brick duplex, little iron gate out front. She watches birds and runs a Tuesday book group at the library under her maiden name. She drinks weak coffee, still drives, and thinks Wi-Fi is a scam." I said, "She sounds like someone worth knowing." He hesitated, then added, "She's been under my grandfather's thumb most of her life. He's 93 now. Still scares people." I leaned back in my chair, looked at the ceiling. Let her decide what scares her. Just give her the choice. He nodded on the line. I could hear it in the breath. "I'll float the first call. If she doesn't panic, I'll loop you in." We hung up. That same night, I dropped by Dale Mercier's place, rented storefront under an old HVAC shop, dusty windows and a half-lit notary on site sign in the corner. He let me in through the side and pointed at his magnifier lamp without saying hello. "I already circled the 4 trouble spots," he said. "The C in Cora, 2 strokes, bottom to top. Your girl wrote top to bottom. This signature's a left-hand copycat. I'd bet my pension." He rotated the page under the lens. "Also, pressure is wrong. See this? The ink pools here and here. Somebody was trying to trace over a guide." I handed him the FOIA file I'd pulled on the notary's ledger from May of '86. 3 separate entries, all marked cash, all lacking corresponding case numbers. Dale whistled under his breath. "That's either sloppy or shady, or both." He pointed to the date on the third one, May 19th, 1986. "That's your week. Bet you anything that matches the ledger at county." I already wrote down the stamp ID, I said. Harold confirmed it wasn't filed through standard channels. He laughed when I asked about audits. Of course he did, Dale muttered. Nobody audits this stuff unless there's a lawsuit. Most people can't afford to sue dead records. I left him with a copy of the notary page and the digitized signature on a USB. Told him I'd need a preliminary statement before the weekend. Back home, I poured a cup of lukewarm tea, pressed play on the cassette one more time, and let Cora's voice fill the room like fog. I knew every word now, her pacing, the breaks in breath. But this time I caught something I hadn't before. Right near the end, just as she's talking about revising the register, there's a sound, a door chime, then a name, half mumbled in the background. Alvarez. I paused the tape, rewound, played it again. Alvarez. Could have been a person, could have been a sign, could have been nothing. But it stuck. The next day I called Jennifer while she was on break. You ever hear of someone named Alvarez working OB in the late 80s? Around the time your aunt did? She was quiet for a beat. My Aunt Maritza worked nights in records back then. Hospital near Seaglade. She left in the early 90s and moved to Florida. Would she remember anything from back then? She's got boxes of old notebooks, Jennifer said. Writes down everything. Won't use a cell phone, still balances her checkbook by hand. I told her about the name in the background on the cassette. She didn't brush it off. I'll text her, Jennifer said. She still talks to me. If she's willing, I'll set up a call. 2 hours later, I got the message. She remembers a judge who scared her. Says she'll talk on Sunday. She still has notebooks. I stared at that message for a long while, then copied it into my logbook, just below the lab confirmation. I underlined it once. Scout got up, walked over, and set his chin on my knee. I rubbed his head and said nothing. Not yet. Greg didn't say much on the drive to Pine Harbor. Scout rode in the back, head out the window, ears back in the wind, like he was doing recon. I sat up front with the recorder in my coat pocket, switched on, volume low, mic open. The place sat on a hill like it thought it was a country club, all beige stone and brass plaques, but you could smell the truth when the doors slid open. Bleach, potatoes, and waiting. We signed in with the front desk and asked for Arthur McMillan. The girl didn't even blink. Second floor, left wing. TV will guide you. We found him parked in a high-backed recliner, feet propped under a heavy wool blanket, a muted legal show flickering on the oversized TV. He had a tray beside him with 3 pill bottles lined up like little soldiers and a bowl of uneaten cream soup with the skin forming on top. Greg hung back by the door. I stepped forward and nodded once, polite but plain. Sir, I said, voice steady. I'm looking into an April 1986 birth record. Name listed as C. McMillan. There's a problem in the ledger. He didn't answer right away. Just looked me over slow, like he was sizing up an old car someone was trying to sell him. Then he turned to Greg. His eyes lingered there a little longer, narrowed, then came back to me. My daughter made choices, he said. I protected my family. His voice was sharp, like steel tapped on glass. No tremor, just control. I nodded like I hadn't heard it 100 ways before. Understood, but I've got a question. I pulled a printout from my folder and laid it on the tray. This is a notary stamp. It's from a relinquishment form filed in May of that year. It's linked to your former law partner's office. Why would it show a cash entry if the mother didn't sign? He snorted, short, ugly, dismissive. Because people needed help understanding consequences, he said. Emotion doesn't always lead to responsible action. Greg stepped closer, voice calm as a slack tide. Did you sign for her? The judge smiled. Not smug, lazy, like he didn't even have to think about it. I made sure the right thing happened for her future. I tapped the line on the ledger. And the stillborn entry? He waved a hand, bored. Clerical error, corrected before any harm came of it. Greg folded his arms. but there are two entries. One says, stillborn. The other shows a live birth with the name partially scrubbed and the margins initialed by someone not logged in the clerk roster. The judge just stared at the TV. You ever been a parent, Mr. Preston? Stepfather, I said. Wife died in 2004. Daughter still alive. Against my better judgment. He smirked. Then you understand. Sometimes a man has to protect what matters. I leaned in a little. Do you know a woman named Maritza Alvarez? That did it. Just a flick of the eye. Barely moved. But it was there. Recognition held too long. I knew an Alvarez, he said. Nurse, maybe. Can't say. She worked nights in records, I said. Seaglade, 1985 to 1991. Says she remembers a judge who scared her. He didn't answer that. Just picked up the remote and clicked the volume higher on the TV. Law and Order rerun, judge banging a gavel. A nurse came in with a paper cup of pills and a Dixie cup of water. Here you go, Judge, she said cheerfully. He grumbled something, took them without looking, then waved her away. As she walked out, he muttered under his breath, not quite to himself, not quite to us. You think you can undo 40 years with a podcast? I never said podcast, neither did Greg. I didn't say a word. Just stood there while he looked back at the screen, like we were already gone. Back in the car, windows up, Greg stared out the windshield for a long time. Scout jumped in back and curled into a ball like he wanted no part of what just happened. That's a quasi-confession, Greg said finally. No, I said. That's a man who thinks the tide never turns. But it does. Always. We drove back in silence. That night I emailed Dale the recording. He called me the next morning before I'd even finished my oatmeal. The judge just buried himself, Dale said. Not full-on admission, but it's enough. You pair that with the ledger, my expert report on the forged signature, and the notary cash log, civil court won't blink. You're not going to win a settlement, but you're going to open the right doors. That afternoon, I filed a complaint with the State Bar's Historical Committee. Took 2 hours and a notarized cover letter, which Dale provided himself. We also drafted a petition for record release through surrogate's court, targeting Arthur's partner's old firm, which still existed under a new name but kept dusty boxes in a locked storage room downtown. Paper makes its own wake, and we were just getting started. On Thursday morning, Randy posted his video. Shot from his 4th-floor balcony, you could see Scout trotting across the crosswalk, tail straight, wind blowing his ears back, and those medics hustling to keep up behind him. Then the ER doors opened, and Scout sat down, like he'd punched the clock and was waiting for instructions. Local news ate it up. Reporter named Trina Webb called that afternoon. Said she'd seen the clip, verified it with the hospital, and wanted to run the piece for the Thursday night segment. I'll blur your address, she said, and we'll stick to the story. Trained dog, medical emergency, quick thinking. I asked her if she needed anything else. She said, nope. I already spoke with Stacy at Harborview. She was solid. Said your dog could pass pharmacy tech exams if he had thumbs. The piece ran just after the sports segment. Scout on screen, the voiceover clean and clear. They used Randy's footage, added a still of Scout lying next to my ER bed, and mentioned I'd been fast-tracked because of the dog's response in my emergency folder. Jennifer texted right after, good PR helps when budgets come up. Tell Scout he's famous. The co-op meeting that weekend was packed. Most of the time, they struggled to get a quorum. That night, the folding chairs were full. I wore a clean button-up, brought a stack of labeled binders, and kept Scout beside me, harness on. He stayed curled under my seat like he was born there. Tara showed up late, all drama. Marched in holding a printed petition with signatures she probably guilted out of 3 neighbors who never leave their units. She read the title like she was on stage. Concern regarding unregulated service animal endangering resident safety. Some heads turned, some didn't. I let her talk. Then I stood up, pulled out my folder, and passed copies around like subpoenas. First, the police incident number, then the animal control report, complete with chain of custody photos. Then the tox screen that confirmed xylitol traces on the ham. Then the hospital's signed letter certifying Scout as a trained medical alert dog. Task trained, recognized, logged. The room went still. People murmured. One neighbor, Mrs. Langford from 3B, muttered, "That's attempted poisoning." The board president tried to pivot. "This meeting isn't about the incident. It's about occupancy compliance. We're reviewing units with long-term guests." I cut him off, pulled out the next folder, flipped to the blue tab. Paid assessments, 2021 through 2025. I handed over my proprietary lease, stock certificate, and a notarized copy of ownership showing sole title in my name since 2004. "I'm not a guest," I said, "and I don't miss dues. You know that." Tara shifted in her chair, trying to find her next move. She went with, "Then let's talk wellness. This unit needs a full inspection to ensure it's safe. If we're talking about medical issues and aging, the board should verify living conditions." I didn't flinch. "Tomorrow at 9, I said. "I'll be here, and I'm inviting someone." The board president blinked. "Who?" "Trina Webb, Channel 7. That landed like a punch. Nobody spoke for a full 3 seconds. Next morning, Trina showed up in jeans, windbreaker, tiny camera on a tripod. Super came with one board member, young guy named Micah with clean shoes and a clipboard. They stepped through my place room by room, checked my stove, sink, bathroom rails, smoke detector, labels on everything, floors clean, Scout's bed tucked neatly beside the couch. Micah said, "This looks better than most 20-year-olds' places." Trina raised an eyebrow. "Has the dog ever shown aggression?" Micah shook his head. He barely moved when we walked in. Scout sat through the whole thing like it was a second job. Tara stood in the hallway, watching everything with her arms crossed. Trina turned the camera toward her and asked, "Can you comment on the animal control report that confirmed a toxin in the meat you allegedly offered the dog?" Tara spun and left. No comment. That night the board reconvened. Same faces, new tone. They voted 4-1 to drop the guest animal letter. They also voted, by motion and majority, to bar Tara Nolan from entering the building without my written consent. I pulled out my calendar, wrote down the vote time in black ink, and smiled. That weekend, Trina ran a follow-up segment, Seniors and Service Dogs, the Quiet Heroes. It showed Scout curled under my chair, footage of him guiding medics, and a clip from the inspection showing my binder tabs lined up by year. The comment section went warm, words like dignity, independence, and why can't more people be like this? For the first time in years, neighbors greeted me in the lobby, not just nods, actual words. "Good morning. Glad you're feeling better." One woman asked if Scout was doing autographs. I was sitting at the kitchen table checking email when Greg texted, "Mom wants to meet. Public place, lots of people. She said she's willing, just nervous." I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "Tell her noon at the marina. Gulls don't judge." Scout stayed glued to my leg all morning. Didn't nap, didn't play with his rope. Just followed me from room to room, eyes up, like he could feel what was coming. I crouched beside him before we left, ran a hand over his ears and whispered, "We're just going for a walk." But even I didn't fully believe that. She was already there when we pulled up, standing by the bait shack in a blue windbreaker, arms folded, chin tucked down like she didn't want the gulls getting a good look at her. Her hair was gray now, tied back tight, and her posture had that same stubborn tilt I remembered. She didn't look like a ghost, just a woman who'd walked through every storm and had the lines to prove it. I stepped out of the car and said her name. She looked up, didn't flinch. "Walter." That was it for a full minute. We didn't rush it, just stood there breathing the same cold salt air, letting 39 years fold down into the space between two people still upright. She broke it first. "He kept everything," she said. "The cars were in his name. My apartment key. He held it for safety. He called 3 times a day, even had the neighbor check if I didn't answer by the 3rd ring. When he fell last year, I finally changed the locks. I reached into my coat and pulled out the little digital player with the cassette file. It was cheap, just buttons and a headphone jack, but it worked. I handed it over without a word. She pressed play and listened to her own voice from April of 1986. When it ended, she closed her eyes for a second, then looked right at me. "That day," she said, voice tight, "he brought a man in a gray suit with a file of forms. I was crying. I was in a robe. I remember him saying I'd already signed, but I don't remember holding a pen." We sat on a bench facing the water. Scout lay between us like a soft, living anchor. I kept my hands on my knees, just breathing slow. "I knew about Greg," she said. "I always knew. But my father told me he'd been adopted by someone else, that it was sealed, and I wasn't allowed to ask questions." "He likes fixing things," I said. "Used to take apart the toaster as a kid. Took it apart twice, actually." She smiled at that, small and sad. "He builds radios now. Quiet ones, for old people who live alone." We sat in that silence a little longer, and then Greg walked up from the parking lot. His hands were in his pockets, jacket zipped up too high, like he was trying to shrink himself down. Cora turned, looked once, and stood. She didn't speak, just reached up and laid her palm on his cheek. I turned my face toward the water. Gulls screeched overhead. Dock lines clanged against poles. Nobody cried. We didn't hug. We didn't say anything dramatic. What we agreed on was coffee and paperwork. Cora said she wanted to give a statement to the DA's elder fraud unit. I told her I had a contact at the hospital, Jennifer's social worker, who could push that door open for her. She nodded like she was already halfway there. That afternoon, we drove back to County Archives. Scout stayed in the car with the window cracked, tail thumping every so often like he knew we were closing a circle. Harold was behind the desk again. Still had the same mug, same loose tie. "We found something," he said when he saw us. "It's a memo." He slid it across the table. Dated May 22nd, 1986. Says, "Amended per directive from Calgrove, Warren, and Flint. Use existing notary. File under revised birth." I checked the stamp code. Same one from the false relinquishment form. We copied it by hand. No cameras. That night, Dale delivered his affidavit. Full page. Highly technical. Signed with the kind of signature you use when you want it read in court. Agnes sent a letter of her own. Said she remembered the date, the name, and the crying girl on the stairwell. "It wasn't legal. It was fear," she wrote. Jennifer's aunt emailed a scanned notebook page. In shaky ballpoint it read, "Judge A, night, cash, no case number." Dated 2 days before the memo Harold gave us. The next morning, I walked to the post office and filed a sworn statement at Surrogate's Court. Then I mailed 2 certified copies to myself, one to Lydia, one to the DA's office, and logged all 4 tracking numbers in my binder. It's what I was trained to do. Paper first, emotion later. The apartment hearing came first. We met in a bland municipal room with peeling paint and those plastic chairs that feel like punishment. Tara showed up in heels too high for the carpet and brought a new lawyer with slicked back hair and a cheap leather briefcase. He said the word optics at least 5 times before the clerk even called us in. That's when I knew he watched more courtroom drama than he'd ever spent inside an actual one. Lydia Seaton, my lawyer, came in with a single manila folder. No fuss. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, didn't bother with small talk. She laid everything down in one clean stack. Police report, animal control file, talk screen, lease agreement, and the co-op board's vote. Everything cross-referenced, dated, signed. Tara's guy tried to argue some nonsense about community safety and perceived risk. Lydia didn't even blink, just flipped a page and said, "Would you like to read the xylitol confirmation out loud, counselor, or shall I?" He folded. The board ratified the no trespass resolution, unanimous this time, and formally dropped Tara's occupancy claim. Lydia leaned in and added one last item, harassment complaint and civil claim for legal fees. Tara didn't look at me once, just gathered her things and walked out fast enough to miss her own lawyer trying to catch up. I didn't gloat, Didn't say a word. Just walked to the super's desk, handed over my old fob, and asked for a new one with a clean tag. "Take Tara Nolan off the approved visitor list while you're at it," I said. The super didn't ask questions, just typed, clicked, and smiled. "About time, Walter." That night, Greg called. "Mom says we're past the quiet conversation phase. She wants to testify. She's already spoken with the social worker." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "Then let's file the real case." He offered me a place to stay while things moved. Spare room in his house by the canal. Quiet, second floor, clean sheets. Scout figured out the route in 2 walks flat. He even learned which streetlight poles got too close to the curb and which flower beds had buried tennis balls. The following Monday, we met with the DA's intake unit. The hospital social worker had set it up through her contact. Cora told her story in a steady, quiet voice. Didn't cry, didn't stall. She handed over her notes, the notary details, the audio, the affidavit, and the old clerk memo. A detective took one look at the ledger copy and Dale's expert report and nodded like he was already drawing the case chart in his head. 3 days later, Judge Arthur's old firm turned over a dusty box full of file folders and unused envelopes. Taped to the inside of one was a slip of yellow paper in Arthur's handwriting. Insure entry shows SB, confirm notary availability. Cash handled, no receipt. There was a check register inside too. 3 stubs ripped out in sequence, no copies, no notes. Sometimes the tide really does turn. Trina's third piece ran that same week. Dog, paperwork, and a portman's fight. She showed Scout's route again, but this time layered in my file system, the housing win, and clips from Dale's handwriting breakdown. The comments rolled in fast. This time they came with names, nurses, retired clerks, even one former board member who said they'd been silently rooting for Walter since day one. The co-op president even sent me a one-line email. "I was wrong. You were right." I packed 1 suitcase, shirts, meds, a couple books, and left my keys in a sealed envelope with Lydia. She'll need them for the next hearing. For now, the apartment can sit quiet. That evening, the 4 of us walked the pier, me, Cora, Greg, and Scout. Cora kept to my left, the way she used to. Greg to my right, hands in his pockets, thinking things I didn't need to ask about. Scout led the way, tail level, ears perked. The wind cut across the docks, but it didn't bite. I'm not 20 anymore. I don't need a movie ending. I needed the truth, a roof, and a reason to keep showing up. We got all 3. Have you ever had to cut someone out of your life, even if they were family, just to protect your peace? Let us know in the comments. If this story hit home, leave a like and subscribe. It's just 1 click for you, but it means everything to us. And if you enjoyed the story, drop a comment, even just to say great story or share your thoughts. It really helps the channel grow. Love you guys.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.